Hello, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Daniel, and I work at the Chartered Institute of Fundraising, and absolutely delighted to be joined by Becky and Freya today for our first lunchtime learning session as part of our work supporting Giving Tuesday this year. For those of you that are coming here through knowing about Giving Tuesday, but not about the Chartered Institute of Fundraising, we're the UK professional membership body for fundraising and fundraisers. And this year we are running and supporting the Giving Tuesday campaign here in the UK. This session today is all around hearing from Freya and Becky, two brilliant people with lots of insight, tips, thoughts to share around running your social media and digital campaigns. It's a great opportunity for you to hear from them, to get some thoughts and sparks going about what you could maybe do for Giving Tuesday this year, but also wider than Giving Tuesday around what you might be doing in the digital space and how that can support your fundraising for whatever cause or charity that you work for in the future. The session is being recorded, and we will make the recording available through the Giving Tuesday website and channels for anybody that'd like to rewatch it, or you can pass on to colleagues, or for people that registered and weren't able to make it on the day. We also have a transcript function. So on the bottom of your Zoom screens, you should see an opportunity to put on live transcripts. So if anybody would like to be able to follow what we're saying through that, then please do put that on. I think that was all I was really going to say as an intro. Becky and Freya, would you like to just kind of say hello and introduce yourselves so people know who they're going to hear from today?
Hello, I'm Becky Steed and I work at Think, which is a fundraising consultancy, as their digital projects manager. I've been there for about 5 months now. But prior to that, I managed the social media team at the RNLI for 12 and a half years. And before that, I was at the Stroke Association. That's me. Hello.
Hello, I'm Freya Kendall and I work as the Senior Social Media Officer for Alzheimer's Society. I literally have only just joined, been there a couple of weeks. So prior to that, I was at the RNLI for just over a year as the social media executive. And then before that, I worked in public sector, so I worked in marketing for 5 years.
Fantastic. And I will come to you both because you're the people that people want to hear from today. In terms of the session, what we're going to do, Becky's going to kick off and do the kind of first bit and then hand over to Freya. And then we'll have an opportunity for any questions or thoughts from you as well. If you've got any questions, if you were able to pop them in the Q&A function, that would be brilliant. And then we'll know it's a specific question that you'd like us to address or to answer. If you've just got kind of general things that you'd like to say, or comments or links or observations that you'd like to share with other people at this session today, then best to put them in the chat and anybody can see them and grab them there. So comments, thoughts, observations, put it in the chat. Any particular questions that you'd like Freya and Becky to address, they're doing their presentation, then do put it in the Q&A function. And just to say, kind of with Giving Tuesday, this is a series of lunchtime learning sessions that we're doing. There's details of future sessions on the Giving Tuesday website. I think the next one coming up is just at the beginning of October with 2 people from Meta talking about how to use Facebook Donate and Instagram Donate. So if you're interested in that, do come along. And there's loads of other kind of resources and toolkits on the Giving Tuesday website, which will help support your Giving Tuesday campaigns, but also your wider fundraising and engagement activity as well. That's enough from me. I'm going to hand over to Becky to actually start the session off. Becky.
Thank you, Dan. Bear with me just a second as I share my screen with you all. Okay. Hopefully you can all see that. Can you give me a thumbs up, Dan and Freya, if you can see my screen? Excellent. Right. Bear with me one moment. I just need to make my Screen slightly smaller so I can read my notes. If I can find that point on my screen, that is. Where is that hiding? We've gone into full screen mode and I just need to come out momentarily. You're gonna let me do that? Dan, I don't suppose you know whereabouts that is, do you?
I'm not sure where your notes.
Didn't do this when we were practicing. I just don't want to risk leaving the meeting completely. Sorry, everyone. Bear with me one moment. Okay, well, do you know what? I might have to just swing it without my notes because I don't think it's going to let me. I won't go back over who I am because I've already told you who I am. And similarly, Freya's already introduced herself to you. And as Dan said, today I'm going to kick off by talking about kind of the fundamentals of social media for fundraising. And then I'm going to hand over to Freya, who's going to talk to you a little bit more specifically about TikTok for charities. So to start with, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about kind of choosing which platforms your organisation may or may not have a presence on. So the most important thing to say probably is to make sure that you know where your audiences are. So who are you trying to reach and why, and where are they? And there's some, I've put in the top right-hand corner of this slide, some hopefully helpful research sources that you can use to find out a little bit more about what the demographics are of the different platforms in the UK. The second point is to always take it back to your organisational goals. So what are you trying to achieve and why? Why are you on social media? Are you trying to capture data? Are you trying to increase your brand awareness? Do you want to raise funds? Are you looking to engage a specific community? Make sure that your platform selection is kind of based on that. The third point is to always think about what resource you need in order to kind of deliver well on those platforms. So there's kind of two parts to that, really. One is about being able to produce quality content at the optimum frequency. And you'll only know what your optimum frequency is for your organization through testing. And the second point is about the kind of community management side, so that you're able to monitor and respond to your community appropriately, and making sure that you've got the resource to do that well is really critical before you start moving into new platforms. So thinking as well about what are your content strengths as an organisation. So for example, when I was at the RNLI, we had an in-house videographer, we had cameras on every lifeboat, so we had an absolute wealth of video content. And our communities online really, really highly engaged with that content. So most of our channel strategies were led by video, but that might not be the case for your organisation. Do you have lots of quantitative data? Do you have lots of user-generated content? What are your strengths that you can really play to? But also, what kind of resources do you have in-house, or maybe even kind of using freelancers or other external resource do you have access to make that work for you and to be sustainable? And another really, really important point, choose fewer platforms and do them really, really well, rather than spreading yourself too thinly over too many platforms and doing them kind of averagely or worse, bad. I think, you know, if you have to just pick two platforms, do that and do them brilliantly, rather than trying to be all things to all people. I'm not going to stay on this slide for too long. You can hopefully revisit this one afterwards if you'd like to, but it's essentially kind of a summary of the main uses in order of kind of top priority for each of the platforms that are popular in the UK at the moment. So moving on to content itself, as we all know, organic reach, so that is your ability to be able to reach people without paying for advertising, is notoriously decreasing and has been for a few years, particularly across Facebook and Instagram. There's a book that I've got that I've had for a few years, which I rave about to anybody who works in social media or content more generally, called Contagious, and it's by Jonah Berger. And he talks about 6 principles to create content that will get shared. And so that should always be something that you're kind of thinking about when you're designing content. So I just want to give you an overview of those 6. So, and now this is going to test me where I haven't got my notes. So the first one is about social currency and that kind of human tendency to share things that make us look good. So you want to be building that into your thinking when you're planning your content. If it's kind of sharing the latest news, or so it makes you look kind of sharp and in the know or what have you. So triggers is about so there are certain kind of things where we'll associate one word or one phrase with another. Like, for example, peanut butter reminds us of jelly or jam in the UK. The word dog makes us think of the word cat. So it's thinking about kind of natural cues and triggers in the environment and how you can link those to kind of things that will remind people instantly of your messaging, your campaign, your idea, your product, whatever it is. Emotion, it feels like an obvious one. That's something probably that most charities are really good at in terms of social media content, but it's that principle that when we care, we share. And again, it kind of relates back to the first one as well. It says something about us. So always try to think about when you're creating a piece of content, what is the emotion that this is going to spark? And even negative emotions can be a really powerful force, like outrage, for example, can really inspire action. Public. So this one is about that famous phrase, monkey see, monkey do. When we see other people doing things, we're much more likely to do it ourselves. So think about, and actually Facebook fundraising tools are a really great example of this. So when somebody donates to a cause, a friend of yours, that might show up in your newsfeed that they've donated and prompting you to do the same. Or it might be that you are recording an interview with a legacy pledger talking about what motivated them to leave a gift in their will. So again, it's that social proof. Someone else is doing it, it's more reason for you to do it yourself. Practical value is about, actually kind of producing and sharing content that is of a practical value to somebody. They'll value it themselves, but again, they're much more likely to share it on with others. And stories is probably the most important one. And it's about using your content as kind of a Trojan horse and so that people are telling a story, but in doing so, they're also passing on that kind of key message or piece of information that you really want to share. So the important thing here is to make sure that your key message is so integral to that story that somebody can't tell it without sharing that piece of information at the same time. So again, thinking about content, make sure that you tailor your content both to the platform and the audience you're trying to reach. And I think there are two really important points here when it comes to social media. More than 70% of social media users access social media on a mobile device now. So you need to make sure that the content is both looks great and is really easy to kind of read and use on a mobile device, but also thinking about people's mindset when they're scrolling social media. They might be kind of in a rushed moment. They might be waiting for the bus. They kind of got a little snatched piece of time, or they might be doing something else at the same time, like watching TV. So it's really important to think about that mindset when you're designing social media content and how that's different, for example, to email, when people might be in a very different mindset when they're reading it. It's really important now to make your content searchable and findable. Increasingly, people are using social media as a search engine, and Freya's going to talk about that on TikTok specifically a little bit in a minute. So make sure you use relevant hashtags, but do your research. Don't just make hashtags up, because if no one's actually searching for that hashtag, it's pointless and it's just cluttering up the screen and detracting attention away from the information that you really want people to kind of digest and take away. Again, in the top right-hand corner of this slide, I've popped some free hashtag research tools to help you find the hashtags that your intended audience are genuinely searching for. The platforms like Instagram, for example, that don't allow you to use hyperlinks in your posts or in the captions underneath, maybe consider using a link page. You'll often see people say the link's in the bio, and that's where you have a link in your bio on your main profile. And when you click on that, it's just a kind of short list of the main links that you want to draw people's attention to. And that's particularly useful if you have a website that doesn't have great navigation, where the thing you're trying to draw people's attention to maybe isn't that easy to find. And the last one is consider live streaming. It can seem a little bit scary. Most of the social media platforms do have some kind of live offering functionality now, but it really kind of creates a moment that people can take part in. And particularly at the moment where it's still relatively new, it tends to attract more attention than kind of static content. You get that little pop-up, whatever platform you're on, that tells you so-and-so's just gone live, come and join in. It's very authentic. You can't fake what's going on in a live, which is really, actually really lovely. And you're also getting that immediate feedback from your audience, which is really powerful. So moving on to engagement, I'm sure this is something you've heard many times before, but it's so, so important. Don't just broadcast on social media, engage. It's so important that you respond to people who are engaging with you, make your supporters feel valued, but also those people who are talking about subjects that are close to your cause. Your supporters will appreciate it, but so will the algorithm. The more that you interact with other users on a social media platform, the greater your reach will be. So it's really worth doing. You can use lots of different social listening tools. There are some very sophisticated and expensive ones out there, but there's lots of free tools that you can use, or low cost ones as well. Twitter lists is a brilliant and often underused tool, but even more so, Twitter's advanced search is really incredible. And I would really, really recommend you check it out if you're not already familiar with it. I've put a link in the top there to Twitter's guide on how to use it really effectively. And of course, you can set up alerts if you want to let you know when key words or phrases are used on social media, so you can go away and engage with those conversations as soon as possible. It's so important to agree important messaging in advance with whichever teams in your organization is kind of important to do. So it might be comms, it might be your executive team, but making sure that you've got that message signed off in advance and ready to go just makes it just enables you to be able to work in a much more agile way. So for example, if there are kind of important or important topics that are likely to come up, make sure you've kind of got a Q&A, all the things that you think you might likely to be asked, but also just a general FAQ, frequently asked questions document, things that come up frequently at your organization. And if there's a sticky issue that you're dealing with or anticipating, again, make sure you've got kind of a full briefing on that you can refer to, and that just stops you having to constantly go back and get things signed off, and delays the amount of time it will take before you can respond. And similarly, in advance, thinking about having a strategy and a process in place ahead of time before an issue or a crisis hits on how you're going to deal with negative comments on social media. So part of that, you should be thinking about a kind of worst end of the spectrum. How are you going to deal with trolls? So people who just want to start an argument, be unpleasant, and you won't change their mind, and nasty abuse. How are you going to deal with that? Do you hide? Do you delete? Do you respond? Do you not? Have a position on that. Slightly further down the other end of the spectrum, kind of profanity, people using swear words. What's your position on that? Is that okay? And kind of other offensive content on that sliding scale, but also genuine criticism and questions from people who are well-intentioned. And I think what's really important when you're thinking about how to respond to that one is remember other people are watching. So you may not feel it's that important to respond to that person, but actually a lot of the time it's good to be able to give a bit of balance to an argument, perhaps for the other people that are reading that conversation, and also spam. So moving more specifically onto fundraising itself, it's really important to aim to enhance the time that your followers spend online so that they're looking forward to your content popping up in their newsfeed. They look forward to checking in on your page rather than feeling like you're always making a kind of hard sell. So aim for that balance of value add content for them versus asks. And I think 70 to 30% is a really good ratio to aim for, with 70% being the kind of value add and 30% being the asks. But that said, do not be afraid to ask directly for donations on social media. If you don't ask, you won't get. Whenever you're making those fundraising asks, center the donor. Focus on the impact that they can have by donating rather than your organization and your activity and what you do. Make it as simple, obvious, and easy to do whatever the thing is that you want them to do. So really try to make every single social media post in itself single-minded. So only have one call to action in each social media post, and always try to make sure that there are as few clicks as possible between what you asking them and them taking the action, doing the thing. But across your kind of weekly or monthly content plan, aim to have a range of posts. So each post should be single-minded, but across the content plan, have a good range, particularly thinking about people who want to support you, but they might not be in a position to support you financially at the moment. So think about other ways that they could support you, like email signups, petitions, etc. And whether you're intending to use them proactively or not, which I would highly encourage that you do, make sure you switch on and optimize the kind of in-platform fundraising tools that the vast majority of social media platforms now offer, so that even if you're not doing anything proactively, you're just receiving that passive income. But I would really encourage you to then start testing out using the donate button on Facebook, for example, on your page, on your posts, in your live content, and really starting to understand kind of what your audience respond to. And if you've not already set up Facebook's free giving tools, again, I've put a link in the top there. There's a step-by-step guide on how to get that set up. I would say if you haven't already, do it today or do it this week, because as I say, it's passive income that you could be making, even if you don't do anything proactive with it. I just want to touch a little bit on how to kind of amplify your content and your messaging using other people's networks. I think the idea of working with social influencers sometimes can feel a bit scary, but actually they don't need to have huge followings to be effective to partner with. And in fact, sometimes the smaller their audience, the more influence they have over that audience. But what's absolutely critical is that their audience need to be engaged and they need to be appropriate to your cause. So again, I've popped some free tools in the top right-hand corner for how you can research influencers that might be relevant to your cause, and that you might want to think about approaching, but make sure you do your background research. That is so important, that they align with your organization's values before you jump into a partnership with them. Staff and volunteer advocacy is also such a powerful tool that often gets overlooked. So I would really consider producing some content that's specifically for your own people, your staff and volunteers, to share and possibly even customize. They might want to localize it, and then circulate this ahead of, for example, a campaign launch to really help give you that kind of big bang of noise on social media. LinkedIn have some really great tools that, again, people aren't always particularly aware of, the employee notification tools. So every time you post a message on your LinkedIn account, you can have it set up so that your staff members get a notification, and hopefully they'll then engage with that post or share it on with their own networks. And again, there's a guide in the top right-hand corner of the slide on how to use those tools. And finally, it's always worth researching and thinking about reaching out to groups that already exist, that are possibly not related to your organization and kind of your own people, but are related to your cause. There are some really fantastic communities out there on Facebook groups, Discord servers, subreddits. Go and have a look and see what you can find, and maybe consider reaching out to them and asking if they would be interested in working with you. Really important to make sure that as much as you can, make sure that what you're putting out on social media is trackable. So for those of you who aren't aware of what UTM tracking is, you can add for free a little bit of kind of tracking code to links that you share on social media where you're trying to direct people back to your website, that then show you in your web analytics exactly where those people have come from and how they've behaved on your website once they've got there. Again, I've put a link in the top hand corner about a little bit more about that and how to use it. But it's so important to track what you're doing so that you're clear on what to invest your time, effort and budget in the future, or even right now, invest more budget in something if it's doing really, really well. Capture supporter data whenever you can. Obviously, you need to make sure that you're doing that with explicit consent, so that you can continue to communicate with them. Social media platforms are incredible, really, really powerful tools. But as we all know, the algorithm can change on a whim, and overnight your whole strategy is thrown out the window. So try to build into your strategy not too much of a reliance on third-party platforms, and be looking to try and convert people across to those owned channels that you have more control of, like your email program, for example. Sometimes the metrics on social media can be really overwhelming. There are so many of them, and lots of them sometimes can feel meaningless. So again, thinking back to your key goals that you set at the start, think about which indicators are really giving you kind of signs of success or failure. Hone in on those and try not to get distracted by the noise. And really pay attention to what is driving those metrics up and down. And if something's working well, stop, pause, really dig into it and explore why is it doing well. But conversely, when something goes wrong, do the same. I think sometimes we're good at stopping and analysing when things go badly because we think, oh gosh, what's gone on here? Let's dig into it. But actually, we need to do the same thing when things are going really well and try to understand why are they going well. Then you can put an action plan in place or more testing in place if that's what's needed to try and understand that a bit more and build on it. So before I hand over to Freya, I just wanted to do a final plug for, I've got a Facebook group that I set up when I was back at the RNLI when we were dealing with some pretty unpleasant stuff on social media at the time when our asylum seeker rescues were getting a lot of attention. And it was a group for anybody working in social media at a charity to just kind of support one another essentially and provide some kind of solidarity. But there's about 185 members now of people from tiny charities to massive ones. And it's a really great source of information and support. So if you'd like to join us, you're very, very welcome to. So the link's there on the screen. I believe we're now going to have a poll, which I'm going to ask Dan to activate. So we are going to, so I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. If I can, there we go. Okay, so hopefully you will all see a poll on your screen now. And we're going to ask you all what best describes your charity's current TikTok status. So are you already using it confidently? Do you have an account, but you're not posting frequently? You're not using it yet, but you're keen to, or you think it's actually not right for you and the audience that you're trying to reach or for whatever reason. So please take part in the poll and I will hand over to Freya and she's going to share her screen with you.
Thank you. I'll just sort out my screen while everyone's doing the poll.
And we should have the results now. So I'll just hopefully, can you see them, Freya?
Yeah.
Can you see the percentages? There we go.
Amazing. So not using it yet, but keen to seems to be the biggest percentage. That's really, really great to see. And hopefully that means you'll find my presentation useful, I hope. Can you see my slides? Is it working? Yeah, cool, amazing. So from that poll, we can see that lots of you do want to start a TikTok page, but aren't quite there yet. And hopefully, with me sharing my experiences with you guys and the things that I learned working with the team at the RNLI and launching their channel, I can give you some tips in helping decide how you're going to launch TikTok and maybe change some of you who think TikTok might not be right for you. So why TikTok? TikTok celebrated 1 billion active users on the platform in 2021, and that is 21% of the world's internet users, which I just think is absolutely mind-blowing. It's one of the leading and fastest growing channels, and it also provides opportunities to reach and resonate with new audiences, in particular Gen Z and millennials. So 60% of the users on the platform are Gen Z, and recent research from Google showed that 40% of them use TikTok or Instagram when searching for things online. So it's really, really important that if you want to reach Gen Z and they're a target audience for you, you really need to be considering using TikTok. It also provides built-in fundraising tools and unique fundraising opportunities. You can raise money using TikTok's built-in features such as donation stickers and profile donation features. And in order to do that, you must be registered with Tiltify, have an up-to-date profile with Benedetti causes. I always say that wrong, so I'm apologising now in advance, and organise an account with Stripe. The only payment process available for TikTok fundraising is Stripe, so you do need to be on those 3 platforms, and I'll touch a little bit more on that a little bit later. So at the RNLI, our main focus was brand awareness and reaching young audiences with light-hearted and emotive content, and we set very low expectations around using the platform as a fundraising tool. And it's really, really important to bear this in mind, that when you're deciding if TikTok's right for you, what your kind of objectives are going to be. So what does that mean in practice? As Becky mentioned, you need to add value to your content and develop that relationship with your followers first before asking them for money. I really, really like this quote: brand awareness first and fundraising second. I always try and remind myself of it when I'm developing content plans for different campaigns and things like that. So what that means is you need to think about the type of content that you're going to produce when you're launching a TikTok page. And every video that you create should follow one of the following E's. So it could be entertaining, educational, or emotional. And these 3 categories have the best form of engagement across the platform. You need to keep your content simple and interesting. Do not overcomplicate it. And kind of using that, you don't want to overcomplicate the sign-off process. So at the RNLI, we made sure that we actually had a different sign-off process for our TikTok videos to ensure that we could be quick, we could jump on trends quickly. We didn't have this long kind of sign-off process for things, which enabled us to kind of gain followers and traction a lot quicker. Content should be raw and authentic. And when I say kind of authentic, I mean it needs to be native in the platform. So you can't be editing videos kind of using other editing platforms. Everything you do should be in app. You should add subtitles in app. You should add stickers in app, sound in app, those kind of things. As I mentioned earlier, 40% of Gen Z users prefer to use TikTok and Instagram to search for things on the internet. So when creating your content, you really need to think about how you're going to make it searchable. If you're familiar to the platform, you'll see that they consistently add new ways of searching for content. So now in videos, when you go to the comment sections, there are search bar options and there are words highlighted in blue, kind of showing TikTok's kind of drive into using it more as a search engine. And then you want to use your content to connect with your audience. You want to talk about your why, your cause, and how your work positively impacts your communities. So that seems to be the content that Gen Z will relate to the most. And you want to make sure that your content plan is sustainable and in line with the resources that you have available. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this now. So how did the RNLI do it? We, when launching our page, we had decided to start with a soft launch. So this meant not announcing our launch across other channels and not announcing it to the wider organisation, either to give us that freedom to test our content and kind of get to know our audience before opening it out to other teams that wanted kind of access to it. We wanted to have a dedicated testing phase, so we decided to dedicate our time to around 6 weeks. And in that time, we had planned to test content for all different areas of our work. So things from just geeky lifeboat facts to things about our heritage, then promoting things such as water safety, and then kind of tapping into those fundraising campaigns like Launch Memory, if you're familiar with it, and then also jumping on trends. And then by doing this, it gave us the opportunity to learn about our audience, see what they liked, what they didn't like, what they engaged with the most. And now the team are analysing all that data to help kind of plan their next kind of 6 weeks on the platform. As fundraising wasn't an objective for us, we decided that we were going to work on the fundraising tools in the background, and we still didn't have these in place when I left. So I think that kind of goes to show how long things can take on TikTok. But because in the launch and kind of testing phase, we focused purely on content and building our audience, we decided that we weren't going to let that hold us back. And actually, we just decided to have a donation link in our bio. And that was just how we kind of ran with things. And I'm sure once it's all set up, the team will have that on the link tree that we have there. Content is very, very different on TikTok from any other channel. If you use the platform, I think you'll know that things that work on TikTok wouldn't necessarily work on other platforms. What we did is we decided to remove our TikTok planning and have a completely dedicated planner just for TikTok planning, just so we can really keep a close eye on it and make sure that our content was specific to our audience, rather than our other channels like Instagram, etc. We also plan to post every other day, as this seemed sustainable and practical for us. We have the resources in place to be able to do that. When making your kind of content plan, make sure that you make it in line with your resources and what you have available to you. With the success of the channel and the planning, we were able to increase this to every day, however, to maintain momentum. So I think if you guys saw our TikTok launch, we kind of went and gained quite a lot of followers overnight. So it was decided that we were going to post every single day to try and maintain that following. Because I put so much work into the planning, we had enough videos to keep us going and to up that momentum to every day. Looking back now and looking at how we did that, it was great, it was sustainable for us then, but make sure that if you're a smaller charity and you don't have a team of people that are working on content, don't kind of cut your nose off to spite your own face and think, oh yeah, great, I'm going to post every day, because TikTok will reward consistency. So if you can't maintain that for long periods of time, it's not going to benefit you in the long run. And finally, kind of before going live, we, like I said, we had 2 months worth of videos ready to post before we kind of launched the channel. So this was a combination of new videos that I had gone out and recorded, as well as content that we had already used on other channels. And then we repurposed that specifically for TikTok. So kind of going back to what I said about making sure it was all done natively and in platform. If we had an Instagram reel, we would take that, download it from the platform, and we'd re-upload it, and then kind of repurpose that specific for our TikTok channel. So that's kind of a whistle-stop tour of how we kind of planned our content before the launch. And I just kind of wanted to share 3 of the biggest things I learned from that. And the first thing is to not be afraid of failure. There is absolutely no secret recipe to making a viral TikTok. You can post a video and it will do amazing, and you'll have 2 million, 3 million views, and you'll think, oh, great, I'm going to do that exactly the same thing again, same kind of genre, same kind of vibes, and then you'll reach a couple of hundred or a few thousand people. It's just the nature of the beast. It's just how TikTok works. Do not be disheartened. The second thing I learned is to never skip the testing phase. You really need to give yourself that time to get to know your audience and test as many different videos as you can in a variety of different ways. Remember, it is a test and not everything you do will be successful. You know, for example, I worked on the water safety campaign. We launched 5 different water safety videos, all promoting how to stay safe and call for help at sea. They were all done in a very different way, and we had one that did really, really great, had 600,000 views in a weekend, and then we had one done in a similar way and it only had a couple of thousand. I think that really goes to show that that's why the testing phase is great, because you just need to keep going, keep plugging, keep trying until you find what works for your audience. And then finally, I know I keep saying it, but make it sustainable. Do not overstretch yourself and your team. Work out a plan that is practical and achievable and stick to it. So kind of going back to that fundraising kind of element, I'm going to talk about how you can use TikTok for fundraising. So once you've kind of established that following, you can start to think about how you're going to start asking. And you want to make sure that you make donating easy, and TikTok does have its own in-platform fundraising tools, and again, they take time to set up. So my advice to you would be, if you're planning on being on TikTok, start the process now. So come off this webinar, go and set up a Tiltify account, set Stripe up, get it going, so you're not kind of held back when you do decide to launch. Because at the Light, it wasn't for us, our kind of main aim was that awareness. We just launched anyway, and like I said, had that link in bio. So if it's not something that you want to get on straight away, you can just put a link in your bio to your fundraising kind of donation page. And actually, we saw a few donations through that. So even though we weren't kind of proactively pushing that, we still saw some income from it. So it is worth doing. So once you're ready to start asking your audience, test. Just like before, find what works best for you and your charity and for your audience. When you do ask, make it authentic. The most successful kind of adverts or kind of things on TikTok that resonate with people is things that feel like your organic content. So corporate kind of staged and awkward videos are not going to sit with your audience. It needs to flow. It needs to kind of mingle in with the other content on your page. And kind of another way you can do that is by working with influencers to kind of, you know, boost your followers and things like that on TikTok. Becky's nicely kind of given you some tools on how to identify kind of influencers that you can work with. And I kind of just wanted to say that if you do decide to work with an influencer, then kind of keep your briefs brief. When you ask an influencer to support you, you're asking to access their audience, and you need to give them that creative freedom to create content that will resonate with them. After all, they're going to know their audience way better than you do. They're going to know what content sits with them. So if you are going to work with influencers, find one who supports your cause so their audience is warm, keep your briefs, and trust them. Let them be creative. There have been some really amazing case studies for influencers and celebs supporting charities on TikTok, raising money for different causes. So The Weeknd recently hosted a virtual concert just on TikTok and raised over £350,000 for the Equal Justice Initiative. And there was also a 24-hour live event, which was run by a group of influencers, and they raised £15,000 for BBC Children in Need. So I think it goes to show that if it's done right, there really is kind of an appetite for fundraising on TikTok. If I haven't convinced you enough, I just thought I'd share some interesting facts with you, so you can kind of start to see whether or not it's something that is right for your charity. More than 40% of donations last year were made online. So it's kind of, showing that we are seeing a real increase in people using social media platforms and online platforms to give to charity. Gen Z and millennials are more likely to give to charity than their older counterparts, a recent survey has kind of shown, which I thought was really interesting. And they also have, Gen Z have a global spending power of over $100 billion. So they, I think of Gen Z, I am a Gen Z, but when I think of Gen Z, I still think we're 12, 13, 14 years of age. We're not, we're all going into work, we have money, and a combined spending power of $100 billion is just incredible. And then finally, last year, 75,000 donations were made through TikTok. So again, kind of showing that that platform is growing and it is becoming a place where fundraising is a thing and something that we kind of want to tap into in the charity sector. You'll have these slides shared with you, but I've just put my sources down at the bottom. On those websites as well, there's some other really interesting facts. So I kind of recommend giving them a read and seeing what else is out there. Finally, to kind of round off my presentation, I thought I'd give you some next steps, so some things for you to do, kind of stepping away from this webinar. So even if you haven't decided about whether TikTok is right for you and your charity, and even if you don't plan to launch in the near future, go and secure your handle before someone else takes it. Someone else had already taken the RNLI handle and it took weeks for us to get it back. It took several LinkedIn messages and pestering and poking and prodding, and thank God the team finally did it. But yeah, go and secure your handle if you haven't already. I've kind of said already, but register with the free fundraising kind of accounts. They're listed on the screen there for you. And then if you're not already, get on TikTok, download it and let the platform get to know you so you can start to understand how the platform works and how the content is different to other channels. I really can't stress enough how if you're not a TikTok user, you're not going to fully understand and appreciate the content that's on the platform. So get stuck in, get it downloaded, let the algorithm get to know you and just watch how it works and how it serves videos to you. It's absolutely incredible. Once you're on there, save videos and trends. Trends will come and go and they come back again. So save videos from other creators that inspire you. And when you come to your content planning, you'll have lots of different ideas to kind of help you start with your charity's version of that video. And start creating a video bank as soon as you can. It's really, really important that if video is not something you do lots of, that you start doing it now, that you start creating your bank, because you kind of need that to tap into for your quick fire off the bat kind of responses and videos. Before with the RNLI, I wrote down a list of frequently asked questions that we always get. And I started creating a bank of videos. So we had this kind of list of things that if people asked us questions, we will already have the video response to kind of help us with that reactive kind of interactions. and film in bulk. Whenever you film everything in bulk. If you put together a film day, don't go in with just one video idea, go in with about 5 or 10 and try and get as much footage as you can. And I think you'll find as well that if you do that, some clips from some video ideas will work with others as well. So yeah, don't go in with just one idea. And if you can, find some TikTok stars within your organization. So if you need to be reactive quickly, you can draw on these people to help you create kind of quick fire response videos. The hour and a lie, we had about 5 or 6 people that had expressed an interest that they were really happy to be a part of our launch and part of our channel. So whenever we had a question that we felt needed a video response, or we wanted to jump on a trend, we had those contacts already in place for us to kind of approach and ask them to kind of help us jump on as soon as possible. And then finally, don't be afraid of failure. TikTok is an incredible platform with so many different niche audiences just waiting for more content. You will find your audience. You just need to allow yourself time to discover them. Thank you. I think I'll stop sharing if I can and hand back to Dan.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Freya, and Becky as well. And I was taken with kind of Freya when you said there's not necessarily a kind of a magic answer or magic solution in terms of a guarantee that the TikTok video is going to work one time or it will work again, but you certainly left people with some really accessible and practical steps that they can take in terms of informing and helping them to plan about what they do, which even if it's not a magic answer, there's lots of steps there which will help you hopefully get towards the right place in what you do. We've got some questions. We've got about kind of just under 10 minutes or so to get Becky and Freya's thoughts on them. I'm going to come to you, Becky, if that's all right, to begin with. There was a question, just because your one kind of really neatly framed the later TikTok one in terms of kind of some of the overall strategy and the range of platforms and so on. And particularly you said about do a few of them well rather than try to do everything. And around the kind of range of platforms that you use, but also how you use individual platforms. There was a question around how do you, or any recommendations or thoughts that you might have around balancing content for a range of stakeholders. And I think sometimes people tend to kind of pigeonhole certain channels with a particular demographic or a particular type of user. So they'll say, well, you know, if it's for a young person, let's put it over there. And if it's for somebody that uses our services, let's put it over there. Is it as simple as the way to do it and to balance it is choose the right platform for the right demographic? Or is it about through that channel, have a range of content which you plan to make sure that you're reaching a range of stakeholders within that channel? What would you say?
I'd say there's no black and white answer. And I think it's probably a combination of those things, but I think it's mostly about making sure that you know your audiences really, really well. So make sure that you, as much as you possibly can, understand who it is that engages with you on those platforms, understand the broader kind of demographics and trends on those platforms. Also make use of like some of the platforms, Facebook, for example, you can target different kind of subsets of your audience organically without paying for advertising. So have a look and see if the platforms that you're on have that functionality, and if they do, try and make use of that. But I think that having a really varied content plan is a great idea, and content that is meant for you will find you. And I don't think it's a bad thing to accept that some of the content you put out won't be for a particular subset of your audience, and they won't be that interested in it, and they'll probably just scroll on by in their news feed. Whereas hopefully for the people that it is for, they will engage with it and find it really interesting. So I don't think we need to worry too much about it, them conflicting with different audiences. I think it is very true on social that the content that is meant for you will draw your attention and will kind of find you, and you'll engage with it. And if it doesn't, you kind of pass on by. The main thing to make sure is that all of the content that you're putting out is engaging to one of your target audiences. Otherwise, I think one of the things that can be really, really hard is when we're talking about internal stakeholders who want you to put things out that are not particularly appealing or engaging for your audiences, and they bomb and yet kind of the algorithm kind of marks you down for that, and you've got that kind of internal battle of, actually I know this piece of content won't be loved by my audience, but this internal stakeholder thinks it's really, really important to do that. And I think where that happens, it's just about presenting them with the evidence. If we know that when we share this happens, these are the results, but actually there's a kind of detrimental knock-on effect on kind of your ranking in the algorithm as well, which none of us know what that looks like because it's all secret squirrel from Facebook, but you know, that we know that is the impact longer term if you keep sharing content that is not engaging.
Yeah, and that comes back to what you said in your presentation, wasn't it, around that kind of, when you're thinking about what you're putting out there, remember it's about engagement. It's not broadcast. It's not just let's share our internal work priorities this week. It's what do people care about? What are they going to engage with and do something with? And not just it's another place for us to broadcast, you know, the direct mail campaign through a social media channel. It's
because ultimately, if you keep on doing that, the algorithm will eventually penalize you for it, and your reach will become lower and lower and lower, and you'll just be shouting into the void.
And Freya, I'm going to come to you because there are a couple of questions specifically around TikTok, and I'm going to try and kind of put a couple of them together to get through them. So there's a couple of questions around, is there a perception that TikTok is a bit frivolous and a bit kind of, it's a bit fun and it's, you know, it's not serious? And if a charity moves into that space and they've got a serious mission, and obviously RNLI, saving people at sea, is a serious mission, is there any kind of conflict between the perception of the channel and what it's there for compared with the seriousness of the cause? And did you have any kind of internal conversations around that in terms of, is it best for us to move there if people will think that we're being a bit frivolous around something which our supporters might see as really kind of important?
Yeah, maybe Becky can kind of chip in this as well, kind of being part of the kind of TikTok conversations at the RNLI. But I found with the RNLI that yes, we are quite a serious charity, and some of the things that we do are very serious, you know, rescuing people, and people love that content, you know, sharing that. We share that on all our platforms, kind of clips from rescues, kind of water safety and life-saving advice. And when it comes to TikTok, it's doing that in a way that the audience will understand and appreciate. So some really great examples out there of how people do that. For example, fire services across the UK, police services, the British Red Cross, kind of everyone like that have really serious kind of messages that they want to put out there. And they're done in a really great way. So you can kind of go down the educational route on TikTok and kind of educate people. You can kind of go down the emotional route, anything like that. So it's really well with the audiences. And I found as well that trends as well are a really great way of doing kind of sharing serious messages. And I know that's not kind of your typical response. You know, a lot of people think trends are fun and they kind of take the mick and things like that. But actually the trends that we jumped on with the RNLI, a few of them were to share kind of life-saving water safety advice. And people, it's how people react and it's how they respond, it's how you get the message out there. So you might think, oh, it looks like a bit of fun, but if you do it in the right way with the right message at the kind of forefront of your trend, people really respond positively to that. In terms of internal conversations, I think Becky would be best to kind of elaborate there.
I think the thing that I would say is that I think there's a misconception about Twitter that it's just about teenagers doing dances in their bedrooms. And I think once you're on TikTok and you're really immersed in it, you realize that there's actually an awful lot of very serious and educational content on there. And, you know, for example, most of the big kind of media news platforms now have a presence on TikTok. The BBC's on there. Just about every kind of media establishment that you can think of mainstream wise now has a presence on TikTok. And I think maybe when TikTok first emerged, that was possibly true, but I don't think that's the case now. And I think one of the things people love so much about TikTok is that the algorithm is so kind of uncanny, and the For You page is often quite spookily accurate in terms of the content that it serves to you. And I think it's that, once again, going back to the right content will find the right people. And I think TikTok's moved on a lot over the last few years, and it's not that frivolous platform. That content still exists. It's great fun and really, really enjoyable, but that's not all that it is anymore. And I think there is definitely a place for serious content and charities now.
Thank you. And just the last question I'll pick up, hopefully a quick one, Freya. There's a couple of people who obviously maybe in the poll when we asked, do we know about TikTok, and now from your presentation are moving into some of the different categories, which is maybe we didn't think it's right for us, but now we want to look at it. Do you have, in terms of, and it might have been in your slides, some people asking, practical questions of around kind of video. How do you do the video editing? Do you need to set up a charity account to access all tools and so on? What would be your suggestion in terms of, if you want to look at what to do it and how, what would be the best place for people to learn a bit more about it?
So TikTok, I think, is quite intuitive. So if your charity, for example, are doing reels on Instagram, you can use TikTok. It's just a matter of you getting on the platform and kind of just getting familiar with their kind of video editing. So it is very intuitive. Oh, that's a really hard question in terms of where to go, because I've just kind of taught myself and that's how I've come to terms with it. But there's probably a lot of things online. I mean, YouTube will be your best friend if you're not kind of familiar with how to actually use TikTok's kind of in-platform functions. But the reason I say that you should be using it is because the algorithm will prefer content made in platform. So you might have a team that are familiar with video editing software like Premiere Pro and things like that. While that's great for kind of raw video, you really need to be familiar with TikTok's kind of in-platform editing features. So yeah, I think it's a lot of self kind of motivation. Get yourself on YouTube, get yourself on the platform, practice, set up your own account and kind of publish them privately and have a go that way. And for a charity, you'll need to set up as a business account. So it's the only way you'll get access to analytics. If you're a personal account, you won't be able to kind of access any of their insights. So yeah, you'll need to set up as a business account there.
Brilliant, thank you. And your tips around kind of getting involved and just trying to kind of see where it goes. You said that, I think was your last one, your last bullet point was don't be afraid of getting it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in fundraising, as well as other things, you learn more by trying and failing and then getting it right next time than you will do if you just look for somebody else to give you, like, this is the answer of how to do it. So I'd really echo that. Get involved, have a look, try it. If it doesn't work, you'll learn loads from that and you'll be able to get it better for next time. Thank you for your questions. For people joining us today, thank you so much to Freya and Becky for that session. It's been really, really valuable, and I'm sure people that joined have been able to get loads of really useful thoughts and ideas, and the links they'll get from your slides will be really helpful for people to be able to take this forward. And fingers crossed for seeing loads of great TikTok Giving Tuesday videos in a couple of months as well. And hopefully it's been really helpful in terms of thinking around your future social and digital strategies and how you engage people in your cause and in your fundraising for the longer term as well. Last shout out from me would just be, do check out the Giving Tuesday site again for more of these sessions and the toolkits and the resources that we've got to help you plan for this year's campaign. They're all freely available on the site. This video and the slides will be available there. Thank you so much to Freya and Becky for giving your time and your thoughts and preparing for this session. Really great presentations, and thanks for responding to the questions. To everybody else, we said it was a lunchtime learning session. I'm not sure how many people had their lunch before the session or how many people were waiting for the questions to finish to go and grab your sandwich. Have a lovely lunchtime, and look forward to seeing the brilliant work that you do in the future.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.